What's the process like when you're sitting there and like you're back starting out and you're kind of playing clubs, people aren't really listening, and you're like, man, is this really going to be it? To now you're doing theaters, now you're doing Bridgestone and all these like touring all over the world type stuff. Like, how was that transition dealing with that type of fame?
Oh man, good question, bro. It's
Thank you.
it's what we uh
Appreciate that.
I would say it can be difficult
Hmm.
for sure. It's important to have for me, it was important to have some support around me, you know? I also met my wife fairly early on, which was very grounding for me, and she kept me very grounded, and I have some really good friends that I could kinda that remain constant and was kind of grounding, but it's definitely a journey, it's a ride, and if you're not careful, uh, all the typical things you think that can kinda take control will, you know what I'm saying? Whether it's ego, whether it's insecurity, whether it's a substance, whether it's just even
Yeah,
for
man.
me, like, my biggest struggle is, like, overworking or, like, being a workaholic, I'd say, you know, like, having balance, life, work balance, and all that. It's a constant setting the intention and trying to stick with it and then checking yourself and making sure, all right, and this week balanced? Is my next week balanced? So it's
Hmm.
like, you know, I wear several different hats between artist, songwriter, husband, dad, and friend at times, you know. So I'm like, all right, is my week balanced in that way? So
Is Haley like a big piece of that, making sure you're balanced?
uh yeah, she is. Yep. Because we're both trying to maintain that a bit, you know, like when you got 3 kids, sometimes it can just be all about the kids, and you realize, oh, my marriage is a little bit off right now, or we
Mhm.
haven't invested in our marriage in the last few weeks. We need to spend some time doing that, or I hadn't written a song in a couple weeks, so I need to go write some this week. But yes, like I said, I just feel like I'm constantly looking at my calendar and saying, all right, is it fairly balanced?
Am I pouring into each bucket correctly? It's like, oh, okay, I'm not
Right.
necessarily pouring into the marriage aspect. Oh man, maybe I haven't been home around the kids. Oh, maybe I'm not being in the studio as much. Yeah, it
Right.
seems like you got to juggle a lot of those different
Do
things.
have to be intentional for
Mhm.
sure. Yep.
And
How
on
was
the
your
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what was your insecurity when you were coming up, say before you met your wife, like you're exploding on the scene? Because you're right, it's almost like you can go down any road you want to when you're becoming like a superstar. Like
Now
you
that you
can
mention
drink, you
it,
can do all the different things. There's women, there's a status. It's okay. Am I gonna be at this award show? Like, am I the man? Like, what
do
was
I
your
wanna
insecurity
surround
coming
myself
up?
with yes people or people that
Yeah,
I know are gonna take care, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's all those decisions along the way that you kinda have to make, even if it's subconsciously. I would say one of my biggest fears, though, was, like, being, because you hear all the stories, you know what I'm saying? You hear the downfall of all the artists. You know, you come up hearing about, you know, your icons and becoming alcoholics, or dealing with depression, or not knowing how to manage, or losing your friends in your community and feeling like you're alone, even though you, from an outside perspective, it looks like you got everything you ever want. But I think that was like my biggest fear. So I was pretty intentional on the way up of being like, all right, I want to have a successful music career, but I also want to have a regular life, and I want to make sure that at the end of this ride, wherever this ride ends, that I'm not just sitting there not knowing what to do, like where to go from there. Like I want to have a family one day. I want to have a healthy relationship with my wife. I want to always be able to have a glass of wine at dinner if I want to, without
Mhm.
having to worry about falling off. Right. So it's just
Yeah.
so kind of just staying in check along the way was big. But I think that was a fear of mine, which is also why I was, um, you know, when I felt myself slipping, or I felt myself headed down a road that I wasn't excited, you know, that I knew was a dead end, I would turn it around or get back on track, or at least attempt to. So yeah.
You bring up like when you bring up like yes men and you say, do who do I want to surround myself with? Like, I feel like anybody who's getting into whether it's music or sports or any sort of entertainment that is in a spotlight, the
Mm-hmm.
most difficult thing to navigate is yes men, because no one likes being told you're wrong. But when
Right.
people say, "Hey, yeah, you're on the right track. You're doing this. You're doing great at that," it's so easy to fall into like, "Oh, maybe I am doing better than I thought I was doing," or
Right.
like taking more of the suggestion of the yes man than the people that are trying to keep you in check that have your best interests
Right.
involved. Like, how did you, when you say you were like really conscious about keeping those people out of your life, how do you sniff that out?
Man, I don't know. I think it's a kind of a gut thing. But what happens to me is, like, when I'm around those types of people, I realize that their opinion is doesn't really matter much because they're only telling me what I want to hear.
Mhm.
They're not telling me they're not always telling me truth. So like when I could tell that I had a friend or my wife or a manager or somebody in the band that would shoot me straight,
Mhm.
it only validated what they would say when it was positive, right? When they're like, that's an awesome song. You're not just telling me that's an awesome song because you want me to feel good. You're telling me that because you're being honest and being truthful, and it means a ton more. So I was just really drawn to the people that would be like, hey, bro, I don't really love that song as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, all right, I can take that because I know you're shooting me straight. And the more success I had, the more valuable those relationships became, for sure.
Mhm.
How close are you able to talk about one of those situations where you did get close? Because you talked about going down different paths and realizing some could be dead ends. Is there a time like in your career where you're like, man, I really almost went off the fucking wagon here?
I mean, I think I got fortunate, and without bringing too much spirituality into it, I definitely feel like God was looking out for me, because there were times where, especially at the beginning, bro, like we were in a van just roughing it and literally just like drinking straight Jack Daniels every night, popping an Adderall so we could drive to the next show. Like, and just kind of getting into that lifestyle. We were just like, man, we're out here grinding, but we're also partying. You're meeting girls that you don't know.
Mhm.
You're, that was kind of short lived for me, but ultimately I saw pretty quickly, like, yo, this could end in no telling what kind of consequences, right? Like life changing scenarios here.
Yeah.
So again, that fear would set in of like, man, I don't want that. Like I've been here, I've done that a bit. So like, fortunately, like I said, I met Haley early on, like
Mhm.
2013 is when we met. So I was already like, in my mind, I was ready to meet that girl. I was ready to meet Haley because I was kind of over, the scene and meeting random girls and trying to do that. But I think if I was going to put a finger on a year, it's probably 2012, 2011, even 2010, before we had a deal, where we were just like grinding, bro, and we were, just in a club every, 4 nights a week, getting drunk every night, just to basically feel like you're surviving a little bit,
Chasing the dream.
chasing a dream and roughing it, and just you can imagine, just rough, bro.
Just being a young Thundercat.
rough.
Yeah, and
That's
feeling
it,
like you're
bro.
doing what
With
you're
the
supposed to be
boys.
doing. Like,
Having
yo, I'm a rock
feeling
star
like
now.
you got nothing to lose at the time, so you're just going for it, you know.
And when you're in your early 20s, dude, a hangover's nothing.
Yeah,
Like, they're
exactly.
non-existent. You wake
Right.
up and you're like I feel kind of bad
Give me
about
another
myself,
beer.
but I'm gonna move forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep
Boys are
moving
doing it.
through.
I got to keep up.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't be the guy that's not. Hey, boys, not me tonight.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go sleep in the van. It's like,
Right.
Oh, come on, bro. And you're just
Yeah.
like, that's the,
all right,
yeah,
one
yeah,
drink,
yeah.
one drink, boys.
At
That's
least,
all I'm
yeah.
asking.
Eight beers later, you're like, all right, I'm ready to play a show.
Yeah,
All right, let's
yeah,
get
yeah.
after it.
When you're hitting the van, what was like the moment for you that you're like, oh shit, we're gonna make it?
I would say in 2012, we were on a tour called the Country Throwdown Tour. We were the only band that was in a van driving ourselves around the country, and it was a bunch of acts on this tour, and we were the barbecue band. So to be on this tour, we had to agree to play in the afternoon. This was a summer tour as well, so it was like 100 degrees every day. We were playing at 2:00. Then we'd load our gear up into a semi that was on the tour, because we had a trailer that they made us leave at home, because they gave us a Kingsford barbecue grill and smoker that we pulled behind the van, and we would play our show, load our gear up. Again, probably struggling from the night before, so we're like, hungover. And then they give us a pocket full of cash and say, all right, you got to go grocery shopping and get enough food for the whole tour with this money. And you guys are cooking the hamburgers and hot dogs tonight. And we were the party, like the life of the party. So whenever anybody in the whole tour, act, crew, band, it didn't matter, when they got done playing, they would come to where we were at, where we were set up, and we were cooking for the whole tour, the whole rest of the night, had the music blasting, kind of like setting the pace for the party. And it was a lot of fun, but we were the first ones up, and then we were the last one. Then midnight would roll around, or 1:00, we'd pour a bunch of water on the grill, try to get it to go out. We'd load up in the van. Like I said, somebody would pop an Adderall, and we would just take off down the road. Literally, sometimes there's still like embers flying from the grill going down the interstate.
Yeah.
And driving ourselves around the Southeast and Midwest on that tour was that was definitely the roughest tour. But at the same time, to answer your question, that was when we started to feel some traction and see people. That was when Cruise came out. We started seeing people show up early to watch us play and sing the words. And me and BK look at each other like, bro, there's like fans out here, dude. Like, holy cow. And we're starting to feel the momentum. And by the end of that tour, we were like, we thought we were the biggest thing on the tour, but we were still, we were like
still grilling,
go to
Kroger's, the Piggly Wiggly, trying to get everybody their food.
That's it, dude.
Dude, who were there any notable acts like on that tour?
Gary Allen was like one of the headliners.
Yeah. Airplane's a great song.
There was a few more. I think the year before Brantley Gilbert had done that, but it's so long ago I can't even remember. I just remember watching Gary Allen. Josh Thompson was on that tour as well, which I was a big fan of him. But Gary was the headliner, so we were kind of watching and dreaming and taking notes from him.
You watch him? What were the things that how did he
We were
operate?
usually busy cooking, but I'd hear him from a distance.
Was he one of those guys that turned in early, or was he up?
No, Gary would stay up. Yeah, he was one of the last. He'd get done, then come over to our, area and hang out and have a burger and do the thing. Yeah, he wasn't afraid to stay up late.
I like that.
You guys had all that traction, like coming off that tour. Like, what was the big break? Like, what was the big moment where it's going from like, oh damn, people are showing up to our shows, like, BK, this is fucking sick, blah blah blah, to like the big moment comes and you guys get, whether it's a deal, whatever it is, to where your big break finally came.
I think there was a few moments for me. This sounds a little silly, but when I moved to Nashville, I realized there was a career called songwriting, and I was like, oh, I just thought like everybody wrote their own stuff, like, you know what I'm saying? So I realized pretty quickly, like, I think that's what I want to do. So when I graduated college, me and BK both, we were just pursuing being a songwriter. And so in 2012, we signed our first deal, and we signed a publishing deal, which paid us $1,500 a month. And that was, they basically asked, what is it going to take to cover your bills and allow you to write full time? And it's about $1,500. So at that point, to be honest, as weird as that sounds, I remember feeling like I'm a professional songwriter now. Like, I've done it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I don't have to wash cars anymore. Like, I can fully wake up and focus on writing songs, which was a dream for me. So that was probably the first, like, feeling like, man, I've made it, bro. Like, I'm a professional songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a moment I remember when we got our first tour bus. That was also after being in vans, Sprinter vans. We started out in BK's Tahoe, so like when we got a tour bus to where we could actually lay down and sleep through the night and have a driver, that was one of the biggest moments for us. Is like, bro, we've made it. We got a tour bus. So there's a lot of, along the way moments where you look back and, in hindsight, you're like, we didn't have nothing really going, but in our mind, like, we had made it.
Yeah.
So
it's like small steps, man.
Totally.
First you're driving, then you're on the tour bus,
Yep.
next you're flying, next you're flying private. Like, there's always like a new level.
Yep.
Is there, when you started to have this level of success, like what to you is like the pinnacle of reaching whatever new goal you have in your mind right now?
Wait, say that again. Right now?
Right now, during Florida Georgia Line, during whenever you feel like, because right now you're in a transition and coming off a great album, going into a new album, but like, let's say the pinnacle of Florida Georgia Line, where did you see it going even further, and where was that point?
Oh man, I think selling out stadiums is obviously sort of the pinnacle of where we took it, where we thought it could go, where we dreamed of it going, and we played, I think when we did that tour where it was a baseball stadium tour, and it was Backstreet Boys and Nelly were opening for us.
Oh, that's
shit.
So it was Backstreet, Nelly, and then us, and it was just, I was living out my wildest, childhood dreams, basically, or middle school dreams, being on tour with Nelly, and then getting to see Backstreet do their thing. Like, it was just nostalgic for me, and it was a pretty surreal tour. So I would say that was one of those moments where I'm like, bro, it doesn't get any better than this, man. We got sold out stadiums and getting to play with some of our heroes, and to answer your question about if we saw it getting any bigger, I don't know, man. I mean, the journey was kind of like, the trajectory was insane at the beginning. So it really just took us, we just buckled up, dude, and kept our head down.
You guys exploded on the scene.
It was just like,
even because you like did a collab with Nelly.
Right. Yeah.
Which was, I remember that. Like that is like you guys did explode on the scene quick. So
Yeah,
it's
it was
almost
crazy.
like you just went like a vertical line and
We were
just
just
kind of
like-
stayed there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Buckle up, bro. So, and then it kind of, like most careers do, it had to eventually slow down a bit, and it did, and we had kind of our ups and downs, and kind of some great seasons, and sort of some like, oh, that didn't hit as hard as we thought. But for the most part, man, I mean, that was just the wildest ride. Looking back, I mean, I wouldn't trade anything.
Mhm.
I wouldn't change anything. And it was just incredible, but it really kind of set me up for what we're doing now, you know, getting to kind of redo it and take everything I learned from back in the day and reapply it to the solo career, and also getting to go back and like to where we fell in love with it the first time, like these clubs and theaters and smaller venues that are super intimate, and you get to connect with the fans, and like because you lose that along the way. Like when you get in bigger venues, it's a lot more difficult, and then it just becomes redundant because you go and you play the same 50 venues
Mhm.
over and over and over in amphitheaters. And so to be able to go back and kind of reinvent myself / reconnect with the fans in these cool clubs and stuff, it's been like super, super awesome, and like giving me new energy. So